Dear Gratitude, an anthology is out.
With over 50 different perspectives and stories on gratitude, this book captures what most books don't. The secret sauce is in the number of voices and stories where you'll be sure to find a personal connection to so many as I did. A really excellent book, David Freeman. Found exclusively on Amazon.com.
I'm Chris Palmer. Welcome to Gratitude Space Radio. I've got my friend Michael Roderick here. Hello and welcome. How you doing, Michael?
How's it going, Chris? Good to see you.
Good, man. Nice to do this. I feel like I'm trying to think of how long ago it was that I was on your podcast. I feel like, geez, we're probably pushing close to a year.
Yeah. It was definitely early. It was definitely early pandemic. So, so probably, I mean, it could have been about a year ago, maybe a little bit under.
Yeah, well, I've been wanting to have you on here, and it's fortunately, your birthday was recently, so it was a reason to reach out and try to, lock something in. I tell people like, well, I know your birthday's coming up. It's just an excuse to chit chat, It's another excuse to talk.
I love it.
So how was your birthday?
It was great. My wife actually put together a surprise party for me, which I had no idea was going to happen. And she had reached out to a number of my friends who I hadn't seen in a really long time. And a couple of them were actually able to, a number of them had to just do videos. But a number of them also were able to come and be in person. So we were out on the Great Hill in Central Park. So I got to see some of my friends who I haven't seen since the beginning of all of this. So that was pretty awesome.
That's amazing, man. So you said you were surprised. So did she schedule you go, let's go take a walk in the park? That was the lead in.
It was pretty good. It was a pretty good lead in. It was because it was Mother's Day weekend. She said that there was a Mother's Day event that was happening up on the Great Hill, and that we were meeting some of our extended family over there. So she had to go out and get food and do a bunch of things. And I was supposed to watch Diana until a certain time and then go there. So I get Diana in the stroller. I'm like rolling her up, and then I look and I see Junie, my oldest daughter, running towards me with balloons. And I noticed that the balloons say happy birthday. And I'm like, oh, this is so funny. And yeah, it was quite the surprise. I had no idea it was going to happen. I really thought I was just going to some, Mother's Day event and bringing Diana, but I was mistaken.
That's beautiful, man. That's I've had a chance in the last few years to surprise my dad a couple of times, and it's such a gift to the person giving the surprise. And I think one of the biggest ways to do that is to make it say we're going in somewhere else. It's like when I first originally did it, I was like, okay, Dad, we're having dinner with so and so, and then the other person showed up. It's like you say the Mother's Day thing. So that's awesome, man. I'm trying to. I've been surprised a couple times in the last few years by my now wife. So it's amazing. So that's good for you, man. That's awesome. What an unforgettable birthday day, right?
Exactly. It was pretty awesome.
That's wonderful, man. Well, I love starting these out just by doing a little I call it pre-gratitude. So, obviously you and I are sitting here in this moment, and we've virtually got to know each other last year, and this is a grateful moment. And I like to think about how this happened. What were the elements? And I know on my side, I could say that I know that my short way of finding you was, early last year, I was taking a jog, and I was flipping through some podcasts, and I looked at Cal Fussman's podcast, and he had somebody about gratitude. So lo and behold, like, okay, I'll check that. I go on my run, and it was Chris Shimbro on his podcast. And as soon as I got done, when I got back, I was like, I should check out this guy. And long story short, I end up at a 747 Club gathering, and I believe it was the second gathering I did where it was a meetup with the G.A.T.E group was there, and I'm sure that's where I initially met the G.A.T E group, which led me to a whole bunch of great people, which eventually led, here we are almost a year later. So how, on the flip side, how did you meet? What were the elements that got you into the room that got you in the 7? Who's the gratitude that got you? What was on your flip side? How did you get there?
Yeah, so it was a number of years ago. I want to say it was like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe somewhere around there. I had met a lawyer by the name of Richard Roth, who had been working in Broadway because, I have the Broadway background. So I knew a bunch of people sort of within that world. And his son, Oliver, I had met him briefly after, and Oliver was producers with Chris. So he had worked with Chris on producing a number of shows. So at the very, very beginning of 747, Chris was basically just inviting people to his apartment in the city, and it was very, very small. Like there was like a fold-out bed that like folded into the wall, and like you would get like almost like these like card tables together to be like the dinner table. And I'll never forget. I walked in, and Chris was in shorts and an apron and this like and I think like a tank top or something. So I walk in, and he just like gives me this massive hug, and we had never met before. Like we had just like emailed, and I was like, "Oh, hi! I'm glad you are, excited to see me," kind of thing. And then we sat down, and we sat down for that dinner. I sat next to Chris, and we chatted a bunch. And he told me about what he wanted to do, and I talked to him about some of the stuff that I had done over the years, like different events that I had hosted and things I had put together. He was like, "Oh yeah, we should totally get together more." So we got together and sort of brainstormed a little bit more about what he wanted to do with 747, made some intros, connected to some people. And then we just kind of stayed in touch from there. And I ended up at a lot of the dinners. I was at a lot of the in-person dinners. And then when I decided to sort of restart the G.A.T.E group at the beginning of the pandemic, Chris was like, "Why don't we do a virtual dinner for the G.A.T.E group?" And that's how we came to know each other.
Nice, man. I loved hearing that story. I didn't know, that was great hearing that story. I love the details of the tank top and the shorts and the big hug. Those are really hilarious. Great. I only met him in the virtual world, so it's interesting to hear a story of some. I don't even know if I feel like maybe you're the first person I've actually talked to that has a real story with Chris outside of the digital realm. So that's that's fantastic, man. So let's for people watching this, do you mind sharing a little bit more about you, and then I would definitely like to talk more about the G.A.T.E group.
Sure. So just a little bit of my background. I went from being a high school English teacher to a Broadway producer in under 2 years. So I became really fascinated with sort of what is it that causes people to, want to connect with us, want to get to know us. So I decided to study networking. So I was hosting workshops where I would simulate one-on-one meetings, job interviews, and cocktail parties. And I built a bunch of frameworks around relationship building, G.A.T.E being one of those frameworks. And I ended up running a conference for a number of years called ConnectorCon. I run a number of events here in the city called Relationship Adventure Day, where I sort of combined a networking event with scavenger hunt. And then probably about, I want to say like 4 or 5 years back, I started getting much more involved in the thought leadership side of things and teaching people about that. So now most of my work is helping thoughtful givers become thought leaders by creating referable brands. So what I do is I study referability. I look at why we talk about things when people aren't in the room, and look at how we package our ideas.
Nice, man.
Thanks.
That's yeah. So were you the G.A.T.E groups originally? Those weren't virtual, right? Those were meetups in New York. Because I remember when I interviewed Faye, she was talking about. I feel like her and Amber then were talking about doing stuff in reality with you, right?
Yeah. So it actually wasn't even officially considered G.A.T.E at that time. It was more just I would just sort of get friends and colleagues together from different industries in some cases, or get one particular industry together. So like I'd host like a gathering for all people in entertainment, and it'd be like writers and directors and producers and things like that. And then I'd also host things where it was a dinner of just people from all different walks of life, right? And sort of giving them an opportunity to kind of get to know each other, hang out, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Little cocktail gatherings, parties, things of that nature. So I was always just sort of putting people together and hosting something. That was a big part of my work. And then when everything kind of closed down, the G.A.T.E group ended up really becoming a much more prominent thing. And one thing a lot of people don't know about the group was I started it a number of years back, but my account had originally gotten hacked. So the group was actually destroyed by the hacker. So I hadn't done anything with it, and I hadn't done anything with the group after that had happened. But then when everything started to get locked down, it sort of got to this point where people were really looking for ways to just sort of connect with each other. So I restarted the group and just invited a bunch of the people who I had, left, who had been part of the old one, and then a lot of the new people that I knew. And I just said like, hey, here's a, opportunity for us to just catch up with each other, get to know each other, help each other right now, because I think we could all use some support during this time. And that's really kind of how it went down.
Sweet, man. Well, I just wanted to say so much gratitude for you restarting the group, because I mean, even though us meeting obviously and you having the group, like from that group, I've met some amazing people. Not only have I had them on the podcast, but many people that even wrote for my last book. Like this
Awesome.
There's Dear Gratitude came out last year. Todd Churches wrote for it, and Hillary wrote for it, and Peter Williams wrote for it, and anyways, I know I'm leaving out a couple other people, but there was if there's 50 letters in there, maybe 5 of them, maybe 10% are directly friends that came out of the group that you formed. So
I love that.
It's Molly McLaughlin was another person. I knew I was forgetting something else. I just want to say that, I'm sure you hear from a lot of people, they connect with people and have things happen, but I just wanted to personally thank you here in a public forum that I really appreciate the environment that you created. I appreciate you restarting that group so that I could we could meet and then be able to be a part of it. So it's been very fulfilling in a lot of ways.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, it was one of those things where, I put it back together and I kind of had no idea sort of where it would go and what would happen, but people have really helped each other, supported each other, been on each other's podcasts. Like lots of stuff has happened, between everybody in the group, which is pretty much all you can ask for when you put a group together,
For sure, man. Well, let's dig a little more into what G.A.T.E stands for, just for people who are watching and are here listening. So and then after that we can explain where people want to check it out online. We can give that too. So obviously, the G is for give. So
yes,
you start by offering some sort of give to the community, right? The group. The idea is you want to help. So that's your give.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So you start out with giving, and you can post any kind of give that you want. It could be something that you have read that you thought was really useful for people. It could be advice that you've gotten. It could be an offer of your time. We've definitely had people do things like, here's a free spot in a class, or here's an extra ticket for something. All of those types of elements. But the big challenge that people who are givers have is that very, very often they almost never ask, right? They sort of hold their asks back. They worry about them. They have a lot of anxiety around it. So the A in G.A.T.E is for ask. And it's basically saying like, this group is a safe space. If there is something that you need, if there's something that you could use help with, just post the ask. Like, let us know what it is that you could use, what it is that you could use help with. And then we'll think about sort of how we can help, and what we can do to support you within that. And I think that it's just rare that there is a safe space for asking. Like most of the time, asking is perceived in a negative light a lot of the time when you're dealing with group settings, and you get a lot of people who are like, this is my group and my rules are like, I'm the only one who can promote my product or my service or whatever, and those types of things. And the thing is, I don't want people to be, like every 5 seconds, promoting the crap out of everything,
Right.
but there's nothing wrong with asking for what you need. There's nothing wrong with letting people know sort of what you could use help with. So that's the ask. And then the T is for thank. And basically it's take the time to say thank you to somebody in the group. Right. Let them know what it meant to you. Let them know how helpful something was. Right. This aspect of showing gratitude. Right. Like how often do we take the time to really write a thoughtful thank you? Right. And sort of walk somebody through like, this is what you did and this is what it meant. So there's that aspect of being able to post a thank you if you want. And then the final one is the E, which is for experiment. And basically, that is anything that you're testing out, anything that you're trying that you want to see kind of where it goes and what happens, you share it with the group. And you basically say like, hey, here's this cool thing I'm testing out or trying. Here's this neat experiment. And others might want to join you in that experiment or give you their thoughts on that experiment or help you with executing on that experiment and sort of moving things forward. So when you make it so that the only 4 posts that there are give, ask, thank, and experiment, you really create a nice balance of conversation. In the group. There are some groups that are just, it feels like they're all only promotional, and then others it feels like they're just, people just sort of sharing things, but there's no sort of purpose behind it. Right. So what this does is it really gives some guidelines and it gives some variety to the types of posts that you say.
Yeah, I think when I met Faye, it was because she did the she was doing her podcasting course and it was allowing people to join that. And I did that for 4 weeks, which was awesome, which was really great. Met some nice people. And obviously she has she gave a lot of great ideas and tools, and she's excellent. I remember when I talked to her, she definitely loves you a lot.
Oh, she's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I remember she was talking about her and her mom, I think in New York, having lunch with you somewhere. I remember.
Oh, yes, yes.
It was very vivid. Like when she told it, you could tell like she was there, like she was in her mind, she was there and just enjoying, like saying how you were just present and just appreciating the food and the company and, just being there with them on this, it sounded like an unforgettable day.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, any time that you get to spend time with people in that sort of communal, like whether or not you're at a dinner or you're at some sort of gathering and you're able to just sort of interact, in person, especially these days, it is just so powerful. Right. And it creates so many memories and so many things to be grateful for, right, and be thinking about. So
no, yeah, when she was saying that about you, I was picturing it. They were all even though it was just you guys. The moment was you guys having lunch, but there were, she was picking up grateful details. You know what I mean? Like that's where it is. It's all in the details. It isn't obviously she was grateful to have lunch with Michael. It's much more than that, right? It's how nice the weather it is. It's there with their mom. It's the food. Enjoying the food. It's the the laughter. Right? These are all individual things that build up the whole. That's what those little grateful memories. It's like in the gratitude practice, it's like it's nice to list 5 things you're grateful for, but why don't you take one thing and tell me why are you grateful for it? And that's where the emotional gratitude. That's what she was talking about having lunch with you. She was giving emotional memories. She wasn't talking about a lunch anymore.
Yeah,
she was talking about an experience, which is much more than saying I had a sandwich.
Yes, exactly. So true.
Yeah. I remember. I remember when I originally saw the group, and I, having the fact you had the thanks built in was huge. I was totally on board as soon as I was like, this is perfect for me. I'm so glad I could be in this space. And since then, and also I've loved to meet some people, with Robbie. Robbie is it
Samuels? Yep.
Samuels, yeah, he's awesome. I really like him a lot. I like doing the one that. So there's another branch out too, right? You met another group, and you're getting us. It's almost like it's 747 brought me into G.A.T.E. Now G.A.T.E.'s introduced me to these other people. I've done a couple of those, and I know I've seen you there too. But how did that connection form, and where'd that come from?
Yeah, so Robbie's been part of G.A.T.E. since the beginning, but right around the beginning of the pandemic, most of his work was in like live events, right? So he was doing all of these like live event type things, and then all of a sudden that was gone. So his business pivoted specifically to virtual, and he started basically helping people with like Zoom and hosting and sort of figuring out all of those pieces. And because he was doing so much virtually, we have a mutual friend who has her own group, Dory Clark. Mm-hmm. And basically he's been part of Dory's group. So he basically said, okay, well, why don't we take that group and introduce them to the folks from the G.A.T.E. group, and we'll host some, we'll basically host like a monthly happy hour is kind of the idea. So he came to me with that, and I said, that sounds great, let's do it. And we've been going strong. I don't even know, like it's probably a good, if not a year, it's probably a good like 7 or 8 months now that this has been that this has been going. So yeah, that's been an absolute blast as well.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he gifted me like an hour's time just to kind of throw around some ideas about some stuff I'm working on. I remember just being very, very grateful because he's just he's a very creative guy and very very comfortable to talk to. Very super nice guy. So that's a friendship that came out of being able to be part of your group just because you decided to have meetups with another group. So I keep thinking about, going back to this, like, just say yes and end up in the rooms and see what happens, right?
Totally. I mean, there's so much opportunity when you look at new relationships in different industries, right? And sort of different worlds. I think very, very often we end up in what I like to refer to as the echo chamber of the enlightened, right? Where we're all just kind of like hanging around the same people and saying the same things and doing the same stuff. And it's so powerful to be like, okay, I'm going to hang out with people who are not in the same circle as me. I'm going to talk to people who are doing something different. I'm going to learn some, new perspectives and some new ways of doing things. And I just think that's so powerful. It makes your life so much richer. So why not look at those opportunities to really sort of diversify the network and get to know as many interesting new people as possible as well.
For sure. That's, Peter Williams' book, Productive Accidents, talks specifically to that. His thing is like, get outside of your inner circle, people in different industries, and just have conversations and find out how you can collaborate. Just talk for a little bit, see where things overlap, and then collaborate and see what happens. But I feel like, because Peter and I have been, became really good friends over the last 6 months, I feel like I'm a student of that philosophy. I just enjoy having conversations and seeing where they'll go. And I feel like every new person I'm meeting, especially when I'm in a situation where I never would have met them in the real world, I feel like I've landed, like, for example, knowing you, it's like I've landed on Planet Michael. I don't know what that means. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what it means, but I didn't know what it meant when I met, when I virtually met you.
Yeah.
Andrew, I had no idea what it means, but I already told you what's come out of that, right? And what continues to come out of it. It's the same curiosity when I meet almost anybody. It doesn't really matter what industry. And if I just have a conversation with them, just to get to know them and see if there's something we can collaborate on. If not, that's okay. It's still, I'd rather have the conversation, continue to have the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I mean, I think, it's very similar to the idea of giving, right? Like if you give without expectation of return, then things just flow as they flow, right? And there's if nothing happens, if there's no big change or shift, then there's no concern, right? Because you're just giving without expectation of return. I think it's the same thing where it's like, if you meet, and you don't layer that meeting with expectation, especially if it's a first meeting, right? Then if it goes well, you're pleasantly surprised. If it doesn't go well, you're not really concerned about it. It's not that big of a deal. And then you just kind of keep moving and keep kind of letting things flow, you know?
No, I completely agree. Yeah, like I said, it's the expectation is just, I assume I'm going to have a good conversation, you know?
Yeah.
But there's no like, the agenda is not there in the sense where I'm pivoting this person to change my life.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not going to set myself up. I mean, when I was younger, I set myself up so many times to let myself down.
Yeah.
You know, when you put your hopes and dreams or pivot, like, you know, your whole experience on somebody's reaction or what they're going to do, opposed to just enjoying their, you know, it's like you get on the roller coaster, let's just enjoy the ride, opposed to worrying about when it's going to end or what's going to happen during it. You know, it's just like, it's better just to be, right?
Yeah.
So even with, you know, writing a book recently, it's the same thing. It was like, you know, the creative process. It's like, what do you have control over? You know, it's like, well, you have control over the creativity of what you do, the product that you put out. You can't, if you putting the product out, if the ends means is the product has to sell 1,000 or 2,000 units, then technically you could let yourself down because that's not in your control. What's in your control is just to create and birth whatever it is and then run with it, right? Just take it like your child and you just go with it and we'll see what happens. Maybe, you know,
exactly.
That's kind of like my mindset most of the times. It's like what the goal is, what's in my control, and then just be grateful to get to the moment of whatever that is. So if it be finishing the book, then I'm grateful I have a book that's completed, you know, or if it's a podcast or whatever creative endeavor. It's like, you know, the creative process is the creative process.
Yeah. I love that.
So, you know, I had a couple staple gratitude questions. So if you were to explain gratitude to a 10-year-old, how would you go about saying that?
It's an interesting one. I would say it's showing someone what's inside your heart about them. I think that's I think that's what I would say.
I love that. That's great, man. I've had so that reminded me of a lady who answered and said, if you know, gratitude is when you're looking around and you're seeing things that are making you smile. Like that's like, but I love how you're saying with this inward outward. That's really beautiful, man.
Thank you.
No, when we try to break down the language, it's just easier. You know what I mean? Like it's easier. Yeah. It's just so much easier where it's not such a, you know, long drawn out. It's like, what's the simplest way to say something simple, you know, which I love, the quickest line to it. Another one is this is kind of a gratitude thought experiment. So basically I'm going to ask you the same question a few times.
Okay.
And I just want you to name it's just give me one word response and not the same response each time.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So somebody in your life you're grateful for.
My wife.
Somebody in your life you're grateful for.
Nora.
Somebody in your life you're grateful for.
Dory.
Somebody in your life you're grateful for.
My family.
Somebody in your life you're grateful for.
My Mike Mata.
Okay, so tell me about Mike Mata. What are some grateful things about Mike?
So Mike and I grew up together, and we hadn't actually seen each other for a long time. And he touched base with me on my birthday, and we got together. We, not in person, but we did a call to sort of catch up. And he's got kids now. I've got kids, and it was pretty wild to just sort of have that conversation and sort of see each other. But we grew up together in Rhode Island. We were kids. Our families knew each other for pretty much from like when we were both very, very young. And I knew him all throughout high school, like into college. We lost touch a little bit when I moved to the city, but he came to the city and saw one of my shows when I was first producing and sort of directing here. And yeah, he's just always been one of those people who's always been there. And we've always had just really, really great conversations.
So did he live in the neighborhood that you're in, the same neighborhood as you? So was it basically what was the exact meeting? I know you said your families were close. So I'm just curious what the
yeah. So basically, his father is my godfather.
Okay.
Yeah. So we weren't related in the like related sense, right? But I would call his dad Uncle Mike, and I would call his mom Aunt Melissa. You know what I mean? Like it was that kind of like when your family is very, very close, right? And they see each other all the time. So I lived in Providence. He lived in Cumberland, but he also had a beach house in Exeter. And we used to go to that beach house all the time. And, I remember so many times, like just going to that beach house and being there for, 4 or 5 different days of sleepovers and running around, the lake house and going and buying comic books together and just, all of those things.
Yeah, I was asking that because recently I was doing some writing and I was thinking, how do I know, like one of my best friend Corey, which for decades, right? Like I was like, I was thinking about those. What are the grateful moments, right? What were the elements? And it came down specifically, I don't know, 25 years plus ago, my parents, okay, we go a little further back. My mom was raised Christian, and so therefore, when my parents got married, they chose a church to go to. And it was that church where I met Corey originally, and my parents met his parents. And I was just trying to backtrack, the day I told my dad, I was like, I just want to thank you because if your mom, you didn't have your belief structure, which we don't share the exact same beliefs. But I was like, I said, if you guys hadn't had this belief structure and hadn't just chosen this place, I never would have had this relationship with Corey. So when you so when you're saying, I mean, this other Mike you're talking about, like you specifically know him because your parents were friends, right? It's like, so it's like, because your parents were friends, you got to be around this person who's been your friend most of your life. And now you mentioned a whole bunch of memories because you went to his lake house and all that stuff. And that was directly because of your parents, which is awesome. How fantastic is that, right? Yeah,
pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like not only did they raise us, right? They made sure we didn't die, we were fed, but like they also put us in rooms with people that have, that we've been able to have friendships with for decades and memories and moments and trips. And I mean, I think of Corey and the different, either if it's him coming to my, when I got married in Mexico, or when I was really depressed, him just showing up in Georgia, to surprise me, right? Like these little, these little things that never, again, if you don't meet the person, you can't have these memories, and none of that exists, right? It's like, it's fascinating what those little connections. But back to, I mean, again, like you facilitating people getting together, you're doing that for a lot of other people. So I know you get it. And the reason I asked that question over and over again about who in your life you're grateful for is because I know people have their go-tos on top of their head, and I love a go-to. Don't get me wrong. And the cool thing is you got to say, but I wanted to get one layer outside of that. And that's why when you finally said, Mike, I was like, okay, we'll go, because that was the 5th time I asked you.
I was like, exactly.
I was like, let's. And I feel like I did get somebody that wasn't normally sitting here, because you said just recently you talked to him. So it was allowing that more of a random. Somebody hadn't been sitting in there. So I love. That's the only reason I asked the question multiple times.
I mean, it was fascinating because it. I've done the rapid fire thing in like a bunch of other shows. But usually it's a different question every time for the rapid fire. So when you said the same thing again, I was like, was like, oh, okay, this is the game.
Right. Well, I remember it was 7 years back. I was listening to Tim Ferriss' podcast, and the guy, because one of his questions are like, who are the three? Was it? It's like, was it the three people you'd like to meet, or the most? You know, it was something like, who are three people you either look up to, or three people you would love to meet, or something like that. And oh no, the question was, when you hear the word successful, who comes to mind, or something like that, right? And basically the guy he asked that to at the time was like, you know, he was pointing out most of the time, most people are going to say people you've heard of. Yeah, they're gonna fall back on Bill Gates, you know, whatever, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna fall. But he's like, I'm really curious about who the fourth or fifth person is. I want to hear about somebody I haven't heard of, right? It was like the whole idea of me, like the whole idea of the conceptual idea of gratitude. Obviously, we have our go-tos, which are great, but the idea of expanding that past the go-tos to get to that space where it's more of a what just popped in opposed to who lives there all the time, you know, which as soon as I started doing interviews, I realized I could do that. Because you can't do that on paper. People overthink it. You can't do that in email.
Yeah, exactly.
So what, you know, now that, you know, you said, obviously you're getting out, the weather's nice in New York now, you're able to get outside a little more. What, have you, in the last couple of weeks, witnessed any type of kindness, either yourself or to you or around you? Any moments? It could be with people. It could just be, you know, taking in a sunset, or any moments that gratitude that you could share.
Yeah, I mean, I have two very young kids, right? So Junie is 4 and Diana is 18 months. And there have been a number of times where, you know, Junie and Diana, of course, have their little, you know, their little, you know, grudge matches and you know, as little kids do. But there have been a number of times where Junie has been really, really sweet to Diana, where Diana, you know, is asking for some food, and Junie will like cut off a little piece of hers and hand it to Diana, you know, and things like that, right? Where she'll just sort of take care of her, or give her a hug, and that stuff has been really, really lovely to see, you know, and you know, something that definitely fills me with a lot of gratitude, right? And that aspect of really just, you know, taking care of her sister and being thoughtful has been a very cool thing to see.
That's beautiful, man. I love that those moments you talk about, the nurturing from the sister to the sister, and the fact that you're kind of like the fly on the wall because they're doing their own thing, and those are really, I remember I was talking to someone last week, and she said that she's like, I'm just grateful, like when my son gives me a hug, I can feel his soft skin on my, you know what I mean? Like she was the details. It's like you said, like she cuts the details. She'll cut off a little piece of food and give it to her, or like the nurturing, those little details. I love. They're just the beautiful imagery of just grateful moments, and all. It's something that when you share something like that, it sticks to me. It sticks to me, and I'll be thinking about it. So I appreciate you sharing those kind, grateful moments with me, because I could take that in even though I wasn't there.
Yeah, I love it.
So it's a beautiful thing. Well, let me ask you. You know, I'm curious. Obviously, you just talked about your daughters. What's the story? Share a little bit, few things about your wife, and I'm curious about how you guys met. Who were the connectors in that, and the you know, what were the serendipitous moment that brought you all together?
Sure. So originally, Nora was suggested as a stage manager for a show that I was working on. So I was directing a show, and she was recommended as a stage manager. So I called her and left her a message basically saying, you know, I'm looking for a stage manager. If you can give me a call back, kind of thing. And she called me back and left me a message telling me that she was now focusing on directing and wasn't going to be stage managing, but, you know, that she would keep an eye out for other stage managers, kind of thing. And then that same friend who had recommended her as a stage manager was having a birthday party. So I went to that birthday party, and Nora was there, and we just really hit it off. We had this really great conversation the whole night. We were just like hanging out and chatting and just really, having a really good time. And then I decided to ask her out. And it was right around the same time I had just done a big project. I just worked on a showcase that I put together for members of the industry. Basically, it was like a directing showcase. So I had spent a lot of money on the space. I had spent a lot of money on the food. I had spent a lot of money in a lot of places, and I was still teaching. So things were relatively tight. But I asked her to come and see this show. And it was a stage adaptation of the Al Pacino movie Angel Heart, which should not be a stage adaptation. Like it's not that kind of movie. So we went and we watched this really like just awful play. And I was basically broke. I had sort of bought that, I bought those tickets and that was like it for me. Mm-hmm. So we finished and I basically, we were near my apartment and I had all of this extra food from when that event had been catered. So I said, listen, I've got all of this extra food. Would you like to come back and have some? So she said yes, and basically we ended up getting together, that night, and then we had been pretty much together ever since. So that's kind of the overarching story of how Nora and I ended up first dating and then eventually marrying, and now having two lovely little girls.
It's beautiful. Who I want to step back 1 second here. Who was the friend that had the birthday? What was the person's name?
Her name was Kim, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so Kim was the connecting person that introduced you all, and then eventually, because of the party, so you take Kim out of the equation, or you not going to the birthday.
Exactly.
Different life.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I distinctly remember being very, very tired that night going to the birthday party. And I distinctly remember sitting on the couch and being like, well, maybe I'll just cancel. Maybe I'll just say I can't make it. And yeah, I sort of got up the energy to go and everything changed.
Yeah, I love that because it's like, if you're watching something, it isn't like, it's never like there's no, if the character sits there and decides he's not going to go out, then nothing happens to the story, right? Or normally, unless there's a fire in the building, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You got to bring the drama in. It becomes dramatic, though, opposed to exciting. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think, when I interviewed Todd Churches, he said that how he met his wife was a friend of theirs was doing some sort of article. Not friend of it. No, it wasn't. A friend of his was doing some sort of article, and they wanted somebody to get on Match.com or something like that. They wanted, so they chose. He was just doing this, getting on Match.com to help his friend out for like an article. And then funny. He meets who is his wife now. And the funniest thing, the most amazing thing about that story to me is that she literally lived like in the adjacent building. So this is in New York, where they both been walking around the same space for years, never met each other, but they were so close where when they finally got on the phone, they could yell out the window and hear the other person.
That is crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
That is really crazy, man.
But so it's little, you think about like, the time, you think about, just the new ways of meeting people and like these different apps or programs, and like you take them away and like you take that Match.com away, they never meet, right? Like,
yeah,
that story doesn't even begin. My wife, Rosio, and I, we met in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I was living there for a short time, and she came, her grandfather passed away, and she needed to get clear ahead, and she just decided to book, a last minute thing for like 5 days to come to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And because we were both in the same space and decided to use the same app, people that are not from Mexico, not from the space, from different countries are in the same space, and we connected. And then, you fast forward 6 years later, we're married, she's in the other room. Not, she was living in Bogota, Colombia the last year or so.
Wow.
But again, this is little, all right. Like, I mean, it's the same thing with like Facebook, these groups, in the 747 clubs, the same, the Dory's group, like, even there's several really great gratitude groups. People can do like monthly meetups. Like, it's just these opportunities again, like right back, like the opportunities again, just just showing up. Like you said, you get off the couch, going to the birthday party, or me just logging on the app, or us just getting together. Like, it just opens up a world of possibilities that did not exist a moment before.
Yeah, just taking that extra step, right?
Yeah, it's just I introduce somebody else. It's like that whole idea of just saying yes. So if somebody invites you to a party, just say yes. It's like, just go to the party. You never know. Like, but I love talking and hearing people's stories, because when we're looking back, we can see these little connections that that's I call relational gratitude. I just get excited sharing my little relational gratitude and hearing other people's. This last year, my dad had been telling me for years about the moments where he met my mom, like at college. Like, he can remember her coming up, walking up the hill. Like, he's been telling me stories. My mom passed away 7 years ago, and this last year, because this is a benefit of the situation, right? So because of everything slowing down, my dad tells me a story again, and I'm on the phone with him, and I said, well, I don't really have work. There's no reason why we can't just go, because he's like, this coming Friday after next will be 50 years ago I met your mom, right? The story I just told you, right? And I go, and I said, well, we could go. It's like, we could go do this. We could literally go there. There's nothing. You know what I mean? There's nothing holding us down. There's no excuses. It was just an idea, right? Because and I tell you, we went, and it was a very surreal thing to stand there where he was talking about, at the top of the hill where he saw my mom for the first time, and then walking around the campus, and just these little details, these little stories coming out about, that's the chapel back there we used to kiss, or these little. It was like, it was like he was the 20-year-old him, which I never knew, right? Because he's 30 years older than me, so I never knew that man. And but just those little serendipitous moments. Before we left, we went to like the football field, and he told me this little story. He said, I remember one day that we decided we took a trip to Western Kentucky University to see if we wanted to go to that school. It's like, when we got there and the registrar was closed, and I looked at him and I said, I'm so happy that registrar was closed, because if you guys would have switched schools, there's a good chance I never would have been born. Again, you change the dynamic. Think about changing the place and the dynamic and all that, like those little things. It was just a little detail, him going, yeah, they were closed, so we didn't, it didn't happen. I was thinking, that's just, again, just a little, these little, everything seems so small, right, in the moment, right? But when you look back, like, you can get so excited about, just seeing these little interchanges, again, like just being in the room, or somebody, again, like you said, just somebody inviting you to a birthday party.
Yep, exactly. Such a simple thing.
Yeah. That's it's just the mindset of going out and being active and meeting people and not having expectations just can put you in rooms of people you'd never know and take you places you could never ever foresee.
That's true.
So this has been great, man. I'm so glad we could jam together, and I could learn a little bit more about you. And I thank you in this public forum. I know I've thanked you maybe some private forums, but I really do appreciate the group, and just the fact that that's what you do. You get good people together and put them in the same space so that they can. It's the possibility of those connections we're saying, and things can happen, right? You open doorways is what you do. You have friends and you open doors, and some people walk in, right? Some people don't, but you're being a connector like you are, just I know you get it and you gel off of it, obviously, just like I seeing those connections and the possibilities in the world. It does a lot for me. So if people want to reach out to you, where's the best place to find you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much all over the socials. So I'm Mike Roderick on Facebook because of the whole sort of hack, type of scenario. But everywhere else, I'm Michael Roderick. So like if you go to like LinkedIn, you'd look me up there and that kind of stuff. And my website is just smallpondenterprises.com if you want to check out any of my stuff, podcast, all that fun stuff.
All right, we didn't even really dig into your podcast other than me saying that I was on it. So, and then I'll. Is it okay if in the show notes I put the G.A.T.E group?
Oh yeah, feel free
to. Yeah. That way, who knows? Maybe our little conversation about will lead somebody else into the room.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. Yeah. Well, hey, this has been great, man. Well, I'm Chris with Michael Schreiner. We got a lot to be grateful for, and if somebody invites you to a birthday party, just keep Michael's story in mind when you decide if you want to go or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So have a great day, and we'll see you again. Bye.